then there is the 2024 to 2028. Malaria is actually what caused sickle cell to develop. In Africa, we don't actually have manufacture hydroxyureas. They are all manufactured in India, yet we have the capacity.
It dawned on me that it's only Africans who can solve African problems.
I was in the hospital, Juzi, and then I saw this patient's mom who came, and she was very concerned because the baby is having these symptoms. You know, the baby was born fine and everything. Then 6 months, ameanza to have these symptoms where not feeding really well, very lethargic and crying. Yeah. So the mom was asking, you know, what could be the cause? She was really worried. What do you guys think? Do you think... So I asked her about if there's anyone else in the family, and she said her brothers have similar symptoms, and she didn't really know the term for sickle cell.
So that means like she doesn't even have an idea that this might be sickle cell or something?
Yes, she wasn't really sure, but now we were able to diagnose Toto with the disease. Mm-hmm. And then we explained to her very painstakingly about, you know, what it is and the way it's transmitted from parent to children and so on and so forth. So she was really concerned because, you know, kuna a lot of stigma in the community. When people see your baby is very sickly early on, they probably think, well, you've been cast.
Uchawi.
Yes.
I think I've also heard of a certain woman when she didn't know that there's something called sickle cell disease. So when she went to the family and then now start giving birth to kids with sickle cell traits, wakasema ni uchawi, nini, and she ended up leaving the marriage.
Oh yeah, I've had, especially in the Western region, it's actually something which imevunja a lot of marriages. Yes. People actually break up and separate just because, you know, and of course, most of the times the woman is the one who is blamed. And
it looks like uchawi, honestly. First of all, look at the symptoms. The baby has jaundice, yellow eyes, tired all the time, swollen legs, arms. Like it's crazy. So yeah, some mama mboga huko in Ushago will think it's uchawi. Yeah. I don't blame them for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel that's why we're supposed to now, you know, create awareness so that people can know about this thing, because marriages are breaking. People, you know, people are suffering left, right, center with something that you can just let them, you know, create this awareness in the there's something called sickle cell disease.
Yes. So you guys know that sickle cell is passed from parent to the children.
Yeah.
So if you have two people who have the trait, or one of them is a sickler, a full sickler, then you have possibilities of getting children with sickle cell disease. Yeah. So let me ask you, if you are to, let's say, Sylvia, you have a fiancé.
Yes.
And he happens to have a trait. You know your sickle cell trait?
Okay, don't want to lie.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm looking at it.
So if you, let's say you now go for the premarital, you know, process where...
sounds so formal. Mm-hmm. Say Sylvia has a mpoa.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to go to fiancé level. I mean, people just go have it and have children.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't make it formal.
Yeah, true. Uh-huh.
So then you go and you find out that this person who you love, umependa, you've been with them for a number of years, upate aoni. Maybe you have the trait and they have the trait. Would you stop the marriage? Utamuacha?
Say ni mimi.
That's a short.
Okay, kusema kweli ni ngumu. It's so hard. You know, that point, you know that you're a carrier and he's also a carrier. It's so hard. But sometimes, okay.
Because it says that ama, you decide mtapata watoto mpendane tu nyi wawili.
That's so hard.
I don't know, what would you do?
Don't ask me because I've been there. Yeah, when I went to test my sickle cell status and machozi ilikuwa tu hapa. If it turns out positive, now what do you do? You know, I was extremely worried. Yeah. I'm just glad I got to know. I took the bold step to test myself. And guys, it's so important because imagine a world where everyone could know their genotype, their sickle cell genotype, I mean, we would finally have a solution for sickle cell disease.
Yes.
And it makes me wonder why no one is focusing on premarital testing. People just knowing their genotypes. We are big on newborn screening. We are big on screening people generally, but let's focus on couples because they are the ones who make this baby.
Yeah, because once someone is born with sickle cell, again, it's so hard to fix, and you could fix it before it happens. Yeah. So we've been talking about this therapy, this new therapy, which was made news a few weeks ago. Exocel. Yeah. So it was developed by there's this company called CRISPR Therapeutics, and there's a company called Vertex. So they collaborated to make this therapy that helps to actually. They treat sort of the genetic problem. So they go and they edit, because sickle cell is a very small error in the genome. So you have, the way your DNA is 4 billion base pairs. So you have these bases which are adenine, thymine, just bases. So if you have there's a single where the hemoglobin is sort of coded in the genome, could a place where there's one base, just one. Which cause all these devastating symptoms when it switches from adenine to thymine, and then it causes Sasa expression of a different type of hemoglobin. So hemoglobin, it now causes it in a shikana when there is low oxygen, and then the patient can feel pain in the vessels because of the hypoxia. It also doesn't carry oxygen vizuri. So these guys came up with a therapy and it can fix that genetic problem. And so the problem is it costs $2.2 million. Sylvia, uko na 2.2.
I saw a blog saying, there's a new sickle cell drug in town. And I rushed to check, and I was like, finally we have a drug. Because we've had treatments.
Yes.
And these treatments are, first of all, so expensive. And again, they come with so many side effects. And we look at the most recent one before Exocel. We had the bone marrow transplant. Yeah. And up to now, how many Africans? No, let's not go to Africa. How many Kenyans have received the bone marrow?
Yes.
What is it?
So sickle cell is an anemia. When we say anemia in medical terms, we mean you have lower. There's this part of blood, your red blood cells carry blood. They have a part where they bind with oxygen, and they carry it and unload in the tissues, and then they go back to the lungs and they're again loaded with oxygen. It's a very sad life, and then they die after 120 days. Yeah. So for these patients, what happens is that there is first of all lower levels of blood. So that's why it's an anemia. But then it's called sickle cell. It's an interesting thing because when you look at the blood of a patient who has sickle cell, you see, the way a sickle looks like. There's this thing which you use to cut, kukata like wheat. Yeah. So you see this sickled red blood cells. So that's of course problematic because the carrying capacity, the volume is less, so it carries less oxygen to the tissues. And again, it's not easily deformable. Red blood cells was in a pita in very thin places. Some of the vessels are very thin, so it has to squeeze, so they're flexible.
They can pass through
this sickle, you can imagine it's sharp, so again, pain. Yeah. So sickle cell, of course, the background of where it developed, why we talk about it as the African or black man's disease is because if you look at the tropics, we have these tropical diseases which we see a lot of in these parts. So one of them is malaria. So we said sickle cell is not contagious, but it's hereditary.
Yeah.
So malaria is actually what caused sickle cell to develop, because now you can imagine a situation where people are living in Africa and people are getting these very bad malaria infections.
Yeah.
The evolution had to develop a mechanism to protect people from dying from sickle cell. So there are people who would develop, it's random. So they developed a trait. So there was just like some of the red blood cells are sickled. So they don't show symptoms. They are completely fine, but they are more resistant to malaria infections. Okay. But now when you have two people, for example, with traits coming together and getting married, they can get now someone who has fully...
Quick question.
Yeah.
So sickle cell is as old as malaria?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
And I'm just here wondering why we've had so many developments when it comes to malaria. In fact, right now, malaria is not
vaccine.
like
There's a vaccine.
What about sickle cell? Why is it that up to now,
I feel
in this century,
I think we have many
we
reasons
don't have
to.
a cure? It's still very life-threatening. We have 250,000 children being born in sub-Saharan Africa every year. Kenya alone is
15K.
14.
15,000.
Yeah, we don't even have statistics. How confusing it is. I mean, for malaria has a policy. There's literally a policy on malaria. For sickle cell, we only have guidelines, which are like 2 years old.
Yes.
All these years.
I feel the
Why
government
is sickle cell a forgotten disease?
the government is sidelining, or rather is not giving the emphasis, or rather the voice to sickle cell disease like how they give to this other, like you've said, malaria. Now they have the policy, the statistics and everything, but when it comes to sickle cell, they're making it look like it's nothing. Like it's because people don't know about, like they have no knowledge about sickle cell. I feel that is where the problem is. That is where the problem started. The fact that people don't know much about sickle cell is what makes it to be kind of ignored. I saw the other day in Parliament is when they wanted now to bring, I think they're trying to bring policies which will guide and help people suffering from sickle cell disease. It's just something that it's now being,
Kenya, we are very good at making policies. In fact, we have policies of policies. If you look at even areas like ICT and digitization, you find there's the ICT master plan. Then there's the 2024 to 2028 digital master plan, none of which is implemented.
Now I feel now we are the people. You see, sisi wewe tumeka hapa, we are the people who are supposed to now to ensure that these policies are being implemented. Because, we can sit down and just be like, oh, the government is not implementing the policies. We are now supposed to be the voices.
Allow me to bring another idea as to why it hasn't been mbona haijashughulikiwa. So I think you remember last year when we went to India.
Yes.
And India is also a country that has sickle cell, right?
Yes.
And one of the judges, as we're presenting our idea, later now after the presentation, she asked me, sickle cell disease isn't an area that has a lot of people. It's not an area that many people will find it wise to invest.
Yes.
So I think it's also an area where, as businessmen will say, ni penye hakuna pesa.
Yes.
So I think,
and people underestimate how much pharmaceutical companies and big pharma look at profits. Even for some rare genetic diseases, they don't actually develop drugs because it wouldn't make business sense for them. So
funding, let's look at funding. Let's use hemophilia as an example. There's a whole organization on hemophilia. I think, I'm not so sure, but I think they have about 1,000 or more patients in Kenya only. Sickle cell could be how many? We don't have statistics. Them, they have statistics. But the amount of funding they get to support patients with hemophilia is way more than
so there's the politics.
Hemophilia is the king's disease. It's a royal disease. So it makes sense. It's a royal disease.
So there's the post.
Sickle cell is a poor man.
Hemophilia was actually caused. It was seen first in the royal families in Europe because they were interbreeding. They used to believe that if they marry people from outside their bloodline, they are sort of
from Queen Victoria, I think so.
Yes,
Victoria.
Queen Elizabeth as well had there were traits in that lineage. So there's the family of. So that lineage of Henry VIII, Elizabeth, Mary, Bloody Mary. So there was that trait, and then they were marrying again within themselves. So that's what really made it. So of course, the fact that it was discovered in the royal family, there's been a lot of history around it. These people give meaning to such things, so they found that. So you see, for sickle cell, actually, my professor was saying that. It's for hemophilia, the drugs are more expensive. You can imagine a patient needs an infusion of of factor almost every 10 days, and it costs upwards of 50K.
Very expensive.
And they actually look for people who are sick. Yet
Imagine.
hydroxyureas,
Data, they
Yes.
follow up, they know who their patients are.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I admire the kind of support they give their patients, and now we have the sickle cell
Sickle cell.
federation.
Yes.
I don't even know how to say it. Like,
You can just say it.
I've seen,
sickle cell federation. Okay.
You can just say it.
we know that sickle cell is more rampant in Nyanza and Western, right? So I was,
The coast.
it follows malaria
Also the
endemicity.
coast region.
yes. Now I was wondering, someone who lives in Mount Kenya, for example. Yeah. So, like we said earlier, that it's good for people to go and screen themselves and know about this. Now I was just wondering, you've just been married to Mount Kenya. This side someone.
That's where you're looking towards.
Hata mtu wa Mlima.
And you get that, these people really don't know about sickle cell disease. So I was just wondering, not me personally, but people from Mount Kenya, for example, when they get to experience such things, and I don't know how to even say this. I'm just wondering, like, can someone from Mount Kenya, if
Yes,
say
yes.
it's a malaria-borne disease, someone from Mount Kenya, for example.
Yeah, first of all, when we are talking to patients, it's very interesting. We always ask them, someone comes to the hospital, the baby is not feeding well, the baby is crying all the time, they're lethargic, sometimes they have lowered levels of consciousness. We try and elicit that history. Malaria is always top in Kenya. It doesn't matter where you're from, because Africa itself is a malaria endemic zone. You remember the missionaries were coming, and if they didn't have quinine, we would probably not have colonization. Yeah.
True.
So Kenya is a malaria endemic zone. It's just that we've also now pointed out Nyanza and Western Coast. But anyone, again, with the high levels of intermarriage. Yeah.
That was my point. Also, look at Kericho. The numbers in Kericho are increasing.
Ah,
Yeah.
True.
okay.
I
That's just an example.
Also met a Karanja with sickle cell. I was surprised.
Yeah.
So that means sickle cell should be given that much attention.
I mean, it's spreading. By the way, if things
With
go
the
on the
marriages.
way they are right now, if we keep ignoring sickle cell,
And you see,
10, 20 years from now, it's going to be.
Do you know, I was speaking to a friend of mine, who went to a hospital in the US, in California. And she was telling me that they have a sickle cell department. That's crazy, because even at my hospital, we don't have a sickle
Every
cell.
hospital. Because I
Yes.
know for Ministry of Health, we have a
Yes, there's a sickle cell department. But now a hospital has a sickle cell department under internal medicine. So there is like a very specialized place where you can take care of sicklers. And she was telling me, they were telling her that the average sickler in the US lives above 80 years.
Imagine.
That's the average lifespan
Yo,
for a sickler.
Expectancy is very
the
high.
numbers for Africa, so devastating. I mean, how
And-
can you have 50 to 90% mortality rate?
Yeah.
And
That's
all these
crazy.
children under the age of 5 dying. We have 1,000 children with sickle cell being born every year in sub-Saharan Africa, and 50 to 90% of them do not see the age of 5.
I think because of improper management,
that's shocking.
we have normalized and said that, if you have sickle cell disease, you're going to die at a certain age. So that normalization has made even people think that when you have sickle cell disease, and I think that is a myth we should debunk. I think it's more of improper emergency care
Yeah.
is what is making people die
Yes.
Yeah.
early. And so if we just change that and bring proper measures, I think we can increase our life expectancy to even 100 years.
Yeah.
I think in as much as we need to focus on care, we really need to look at the root.
Yeah,
Sickle
and
cell,
also the
and that is people not knowing their genotype
yes,
and
yes.
they're having babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I also think the emergency care when the crisis has hit. Oh, what are you doing to help the person? Sometimes, when we were coming up with the gadgets, the thermosuit
Thermosuit.
Yeah.
kit, we are targeting the emergency, right? Like,
But then let Bahati tell us about that.
yes, but now you can tell us more about that.
Oh, thermosuit.
Yes.
Okay. So when we were coming up with this gadget, at first the approach was just let's reduce the pain of these patients. But we sat down with my team and we looked at the bigger picture, and we asked ourselves, what is causing this pain? What is the root cause of this pain? And we realized that in most cases in vaso-occlusive crisis, even from the name itself, vaso-occlusive crisis, it means that something is blocking something. Occlusion, vaso-occlusive, and it's in the blood vessels, right? So we thought and said, what if we found a way that we can now, let's say, vasodilate the blood vessels, right?
Yes.
So we integrated some technologies. We integrated heat, and also some form of air pressure massage. Yeah.
And
Incredible.
I think it's so beautiful what Save the Sickles organization is doing, because it's quite innovative. It's new. We are breaking barriers.
True.
We are thinking outside the box.
True.
And what I love about us is how we are engaging young minds.
Yeah.
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 I
Actually,
mean, we are the future. We have to,
true. Actually, notice that the whole of Gen Zs, the whole of Save the C class is totally were Gen Z.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a class for us.
That's true.
We get to think the way we want. We get to be as innovative as possible. And
True.
that's what excites me the most.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually approached, we have an on-campus initiative for Save the Sickles, where we go to campuses and we try to create a club that is able to now maybe identify even the Sickles at university level.
Yeah.
And do activities like getting blood. Blood is a huge problem in Kenya.
Yeah, true.
So even when you say, if a patient, you're asking about emergency care, if a patient comes to us, we try to transfuse. That's usually treatment for most of this acute chest syndrome, where they're having chest pains. Again, it's always about occlusion.
True.
So the blood is not moving, it's sort of, there's stasis in the vessels in the lungs. But then blood again is a problem. So we're trying to do things like blood drives. We're trying to partner with organizations that can help us with sourcing for drugs. I was even wondering, Jid, why in Africa we don't actually have manufacture hydroxyureas. They're all manufactured in India, yet we have the capacity. The formula is generic. You can replicate.
Yeah, there is something I was talking to some fellow pharmacists back then in school, and I asked them this question, very simple question. I asked them, I think you all know what happens before a red blood cell does what? Changes its shape. That is when oxygen goes down. And how, let's say, you can prevent it from changing that shape earlier. That is, you can, let's say, induce fetal hemoglobin. And that is the most common one, inducing fetal hemoglobin, right? So we have plant compounds around us that can do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And why wait?
Nakumbuka ule mtu sijui, there's this myth ya sijui. Not myth, rumor. There's this guy who came up with a drug and he was gunned down by
Yeah, there always those
So
there always those
careful.
there always those
Careful
beats.
you.
There always those myths.
I'm not debunking hydroxyurea. I'm not debunking hydroxyurea. What I'm just saying is that
You'll be abducted.
we have a lot of cases in sub-Saharan Africa, right?
Yeah.
And I think we have the formula of making hydroxyurea. And apart from the formula of making hydroxyurea, we also have other plant compounds. And I always like it when I see someone with sickle cell disease eat grapes. For one major reason. Grapes contain something called how is it called? It will come. So that compound is found in grapes. I've found it. One is quercetin and the other one is called so it works the same way as hydroxyurea. Though it's not as potent, but obviously when you take it and compress it into a tablet, obviously it will become more potent. So we have these compounds found in plants. Moringa oleifera has It's a plant. What tunaitanga muringa kwa
Moringa.
we've heard of
Yeah,
moringa.
not heard.
Yeah, even the one you
Oh,
want
you've
to
heard?
No.
Yeah. So moringa, the scientific name is moringa oleifera, but kwa western tunaitanga muringa. So moringa oleifera has that quercetin in it. Grapes has the quercetin and this other compound which I'm trying to find the name, that induces fetal hemoglobin, right? That they're also antioxidants. And looking at these chemicals, these compounds are taught even in our pharmacy schools. And I think another thing we also need to embrace when we look just in connection to that, I think we have an on-campus initiative, right?
Yeah.
Looking at that on-campus initiative, I think what we should be, let's say, encouraging the students in those universities is to, let's say, to try and think. Sometimes when doctors go in school, most of us are I say we are sit and study kids.
Yeah.
You know, I say sometimes doctors are not.
Remind him to say that because he's
Sit
always
and
saying
study
that.
kids.
That
They're not creative.
Yeah. It's like medical students are programmed.
Yeah, you know, you're actually programmed, yeah, because
That's why-
the training needs you to be an executor. You receive this research which is formed into a
You even
protocol,
have
which by the way doesn't even have sickle cell as one of the, like the pediatric one doesn't have sickle cell management as a kind of high yield thing. They have 5 diseases and sickle cell isn't, malaria is. So you have medical training creating these people. So you get very diverse people. People come into med school with all sorts of talents. Some like drawing, some like singing. And then you realize by the time you get to year 4, year 5, year 6,
Zimepotea.
you ask someone, what do you do for fun? I sleep.
Yeah,
I
it's
take
true.
alcohol. Yeah. So I think the idea is to create students who can think and can actually scientifically explore subjects instead of just being executors who accept they've said we should follow this protocol. If a patient comes with
And
symptoms,
honestly,
we do
guys,
this.
who is coming to save Africa from sickle cell?
It's just us.
It's just us.
Because even these treatments that I see going on, okay, I do not mean to ridicule them.
Yeah.
And I know we are making progress technology-wise, and progress is good.
Yeah.
But do they really get to Africa?
You know,
And if they do, I'm just so confused about this medication. I don't know if Africa will ever fully benefit from these treatments.
one thing I know is that we Africans are the only people who can bring solutions to our problems because we are the only people who understand our
Period.
problems. It's only us. By the way, it's only us.
Yeah.
I remember when we went to Kazakhstan.
It was Kazakhstan.
Imagine these people don't know, like they can't solve African problems because they can't relate.
They didn't
Yeah.
relate.
They can't relate.
They're
So
looking at us like clowns. Entertain us. Entertain us.
Hapo mnasema
Sickle cell. Okay.
250K.
Yeah.
You remember after the presentation, the guy was asking us, so what is sickle cell? From that explanation you just gave.
presentation.
Yeah.
You hear
After the whole
us.
presentation.
Imagine. I was so mad because, and that is when I just came to realize, it dawned on me that it's only Africans who can solve African problems.
But
Yeah.
why don't we have people that have goodwill? We were saying that in our country people want to make enough money so that they escape these problems that we're talking about, but no one is really coming to say we want to solve these problems. So sickle cell is a problem. We are not manufacturing hydroxyureas, but we are donating money to churches.
We don't
Imagine.
even have hydroxyurea
Yeah.
in hospital.
It's crazy.
Imagine.
Do you have a lawyer? We're not getting money back.
But one thing I'm so appreciative of is, organizations like now Save the C-Class. I do appreciate the fact that we are targeting the young people.
Yeah.
The fact that we have the on-campus initiatives where we go and tell these people that there's something called sickle cell disease. People need to know about it. Creating
And
that
also,
awareness.
it's very important because most people
Yeah,
start
dating.
dating from campus.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
They start
That's
cohabiting.
They get
They get
Unapata
kids
first
in
year,
campus,
second
yeah.
year wameishi vizuri.
Yes.
In fact,
you guys.
let me confess. Mimi nilizaliwa when my mother was second year. So it makes a lot of sense.
So I'm trying to think about this scenario where there's this first year, or rather okay, let's say just two people in campus, they've dated, and then they happen to give birth to a kid suffering from sickle cell disease, and they don't know that there's a sickle cell disease. I'm just trying to imagine that scenario.
Yeah. By the way, young couples, there's a lot of things that they might not be aware. Kwanza, the fact that it's a probably illegitimate pregnancy, they don't attend clinic.
Yeah.
It's ni mtoto amebebwa kwa shida. Yeah. So you realize the baby becomes sick and they start wondering what's wrong. Probably finances are not that good because, again, they're not working.
They're still in campus.
So that's why we think the on-campus initiative is really good, because now at least people are getting to know. And I hadn't seen this before. Sickle cell was just something you read in the book, sickle cell disease. And they actually don't put a lot of literature on it because, again, these books we read are American. Yeah. So you get very little thin information on it. So we are the ones, as you said, we are the ones who can only solve this problem.
Yes.
Yeah. But the question is, why isn't there goodwill from the political class, which again has major influence on how management can happen? Because if we put it as a high, even just a protocol on how we should manage. And
do you want to tell me these people in parliament, they don't have people suffering from
I'm really happy. I'm actually really happy that I don't know if you've seen, but they've put Dr. James Nyekala as the head of the the Committee on Health.
We've done outreaches in Seme.
Yeah.
Yes,
His
I remember.
constituency. Yeah.
I'll stop there.
What about it? I'm so curious. What about it?
Okay.
I'm so curious. Please say
Let's
it.
just say that the political class need to start taking sickle cell seriously.
Yeah. But I think if we create awareness and the populace knows about like the extent of the disease and the burden, you can even call it the black man's burden. There'll be agitation. Yeah, if people are now agitating for sickle cell to be given better care and people are more aware, I think that will again press the political class, like the protest they did last year, to take more interest in the disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, which will of course lead to better outcomes for our patients.
Because even cancer does not affect so many people.
Yeah.
But everyone knows about cancer.
Exactly.
You walk out there and you ask your watchman if he knows cancer.
And is it
So the problem is awareness.
The problem may be awareness.
okay? Just being triggered. Is cancer generic? Can it be generic or something?
You talk about
Multifactorial.
multifactorial. So let me put it simply. Genetics loads the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. Something like that.
Okay.
But it also depends.
Depends.
For example, pediatric tumors, most of the time they are just genetic,
Genetic, yeah.
because it's too early.
So-
A baby who is 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, there's no significant environmental exposure. But we have things like tobacco smoke, which is a very well known. In fact, one of the first direct links we found to cancer was tobacco smoke. So yeah, cancer is more multifactorial etiology. So you have environmental, genetics. There's that interplay that now causes the manifestation of the disease. Yeah, but sickle cell is purely genetic. But I'm sure there's a point in history where it was a different thing. Absolutely. But at least we live in a time where there's awareness, and we have organizations like ours which are now trying to create awareness. We're trying to even create a database for all the patients that have sickle cell, which will eventually lead to people being more aware, us knowing the patients.
I
Yeah.
think now is the time for NCDs. I think for the longest time we focused on HIV,
On communicable.
and malaria
Yeah.
and these other diseases, and
Yes.
now we found solutions.
Yeah.
And somehow now the world is now focusing on NCDs.
Yeah.
And you'll even see it with media. Kama ile movie ya Supercell. Umewatch?
Yeah, Supercell.
Netflix.
Netflix.
I was
Yeah.
like,
Supercell,
me, I just wanted to know what Supercell is. Ngoja ni watch. Nasikia sickle cell. Nilikuwa like, I was so happy. I was finally we have
Yeah.
a movie talking about sickle cell on
Yeah.
Netflix. I was so excited.
Yeah.
So maybe the world is seeing, and this could be the time.
Yes.
And if it's not the time, you're
It
gonna.
is. We're gonna force it. Yes.
Tunailazimisha, we're gonna
Yeah.
set, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do the VAR now.
So mesema sita refer. You're going.
We know the myths.
Okay.
ama kila mtu
I can also bring
Ama
one,
we can it can be like
but you can start because you had prepared.
You can start.
let me
Yeah, you can just start.
okay. I've interacted with people who didn't know what sickle cell is, and most people tied it around the witchcraft thing. So I don't know.
Do you believe witchcraft is real?
Yes.
Really?
I come from a community.
You believe in the supernatural things? Okay. Mm-hmm.
me I don't think okay lakini naonanga wale watu wameshikwa sijui na bees man
They want
That
to
makes
want
sense.
the motorbike.
Could I say
that can't be normal.
Maybe kuna kitu wanapakwa.
I can say when it comes to the spiritual world, I can say we have spiritual things and non-spiritual things, the supernatural and the normal. But when it comes to sickle cell being, now some things must be looked at through the lens of science and mostly diseases. I've seen this. I've seen people use spirituality as an excuse for, can I say, for stupidity or ignorance. Let me put it plainly. You've ever seen someone just die or force their children not to go to hospital because they believe that going to the hospital is bad.
God will heal you.
So sometimes some things are just madness.
So no, there's no witchcraft in sickle cell.
Yeah, no witchcraft in sickle cell.
People just need to know that, or
Yeah.
they need to know the facts.
I'm even saying I'll make you a better
But in
one.
Africa,
There's no witchcraft.
There's no witchcraft.
Yes. There's no witchcraft.
You believe there's no witchcraft?
So zile nyuki zinashikanga
Those are
watu
just
waki-
illusions. and,
Oh,
you
tu
know.
wanatokanga. Me, I ever saw this story in
Illusion.
tu eti cockroach zinatoka kwa body
You
yako.
see, one thing you'll realize about hizi stories zinakuanga sijui my brothers, cousins, sisters, grandmother. It is not.
Tumeona hata siku ya shwari. Mtu sijui.
Yeah, you see, if witchcraft was real, unakumbuka someone who was talked about in history alikuwa anaitwa Kinjekitile Mwale, who aliambia watu in Tanzania that we are going to do a majimaji rebellion. We'll mix sorghum and water, and then tutajimwaga, and then the bullets
bullets will melt.
the German bullets hazitapita.
Yeah.
So but then what happened? So yeah, no witchcraft in sickle cell, no witchcraft in general.
Okay. Also, do this disease only attack, black people? As you said, white people cannot solve our problems, so that means it's our burden.
By the way, is it commonly in Africa?
West Africa.
New story ya malaria
Yes,
too.
story ya malaria.
But yeah, malaria. It's also
If you look at the
India.
tropics,
Well,
even
India,
Brazil.
Nepal, Brazil.
Yeah.
By the Brazil iko na Brazil numbers ziko
Yeah.
juu.
So if it's about that's why the evolutionary link. That's why the evolutionary link comes in. Yeah. Can someone who had trait become a full sickler during their life?
And do people with the traits show symptoms?
People with traits are not supposed to show symptoms because just a few of their blood cells.
Niliona jana some doctors saying that they can be asymptomatic, which is weird, but I don't know. We need
Which
to
people?
research.
The trait carrier, the trait people. Yeah, they're usually mostly asymptomatic.
No, symptomatic.
Symptomatic. Possible. It's possible. It just depends on the percentage, the severity of how many, what percent. Maybe someone has 30% of their blood cells being sickle. Yeah.
So I was looking at is it called it's a channel in Instagram where they're talking about sickle cell disease as a whole. So when someone was asked, so this lady was saying that I don't have sickle cell anemia, I have sickle cell disease. And she was saying that sickle cell disease comes in very many variants.
Yes.
So sometimes even those carriers, not mostly, majorly, most of them are not symptomatic, but you might find a few of them, a percentage, who are symptomatic. Yeah.
So, guys, I think
was-
that was a very amazing, insightful session. Anyi mnaonaje?
Yeah, I think tumepiga story poa.
Actually, I've learned a lot from this session. Personally, I've learned a lot. Yeah, and I do appreciate the fact that we've taken time to discuss about sickle cell disease. As you've said, that most people out here, they're suffering from sickle cell disease, but they don't know.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the fact that we've taken that bold step to talk about it, to take action, and that
Not even just suffering.
yeah, you see,
Carriers of the disease.
yeah, we're not here to just sympathize with people suffering from sickle cell disease, but rather we're trying to bring up the solutions,
Yeah.
and that is what makes my heart,
watu wapimwe.
And then you guys, if you know that you're dating someone, please bebeneni to hospitali. You get yourself screened so that you can know, so that you can't endanger the your kids' health and all that. So if unapenda huyo mtu wako, take that bold step, go and get screened, okay? Hata mimi natoka hapa kama nimeenda kushika huyo mtu mkono, tupelekane. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening to us. And next time, please feel free to tell us what you want to hear from us in the next session. Also, we have the different social media platforms at Save the C Class on Instagram, Facebook, on LinkedIn, all the social media platforms, you're there. Also, remember to subscribe, to share, and also to comment. Thank you so much.
There is the 2024 to 2028. Malaria is actually what caused sickle cell to develop. In Africa, we don't actually have manufacture hydroxyureas. They are all manufactured in India, yet we have the capacity.
It dawned on me that it's only Africans who can solve African problems.